Welcome back, class. Today we're going to look at complex numbers and the four basics operation. But today we're going to look at the properties of I and the sum of complex numbers. We will see the difference and the product of complex numbers later on. All right, without further ado, what is a complex number? A complex number is any number that can be written in the form a plus bi, where a and b can be any number. It can be 1, 2, 3, 4, any of these numbers, or any integer, -1, -2, -3, and so forth. It can be a decimal, or 0.5, or a fraction, 7 over 11, and so forth. A and B can be any numbers. Let's look at an example for it. So let us say 3 minus I, where you have the numbers in this case are 3 and -4. It's 3 minus 4i, excuse me. So the numbers are 3 and -4. Let's look at another one. -2 plus I. So the numbers we have here is -2 and 1. That's a positive one. When there's no coefficient in front of a variable or a letter, the coefficient is 1. Alright? Now, recall that we talk about I equals square root of -1. If you do not recall it, get this rule. You cannot do this in your calculator, because your calculator, you cannot take the square root of a negative number. It will say error. That's where you have to put the calculator down and start using the thing you have up there, which is a brain. Okay, now what we have, I equals -1. Let us see the properties of I. When we have I squared, ladies and gentlemen, that means it is I times I. Alright, now if we rewrite this, it's literally -1 as the square root of -1 times the square root of -1. What does that say? It is to have square root of -1 quantity squared. Okay, so notice that the square root sign and the exponent 2 cancel each other out. That's the rule. You should have learned that in algebra 1. But okay, the square root sign and the squared, the degree 2, cancel each other out. So what we're left with is -1. As a result, we can say I squared equals -1. If it is I squared, it is always -1. And now, let's look at another. When it is odd, what we do when we have an odd exponent, we always take 1 away from it so we can deal with what we already know. So we have I cubed is the same thing as I squared times I. But we already know that I squared equals -1, ladies and gentlemen. So what happened? It is -1 times I. So I cubed becomes -I. Alright? Now let's look at the next one. I to the 4th is the same thing as I squared times I squared. Notice that we're going back to the basic, to what we know. So I squared is -1. So this becomes -1 times -1. Hence, it is +1. So I to the 4th equals +1, ladies and gentlemen. These are the rules you ought to know. You're going to see how useful they are. They're going to be very useful for your assignment. Alright, let's look at here. I to the 6. How do we compute I to the 6? Well, there are many ways to do that, but let's get straight to the point so you can get to know how to do this. The first thing you do, you ask yourself a couple of questions. Is the degree 6, the number 6, is it divisible by 4? Which means, can I divide it by 4 and get a whole number, not a decimal or anything like that? Can I divide it by 4? Well, if you try that, the answer is no. Because you will not get a whole number. So, because the answer is no, you ask yourself, is it divisible by 2? The answer is yes. Because it is divisible by 2, ladies and gentlemen, remember I squared is -1. Because I can divide the exponent by 2, this I to the 6 equals -1. That's it. That's all there is to it. Now, let's look at another one. I to the 12. Remember, you always ask yourself the first question. Can I divide it by 4? You always ask yourself, can I divide it by 4 first? If I can divide it by 4, yes, then, of course, it's just positive 1. That's it. Nothing else. Now, try this. I to the 22nd power. What is the question? Is it divisible by 4? Well, the answer is no. Now, is it divisible by 2? What's the answer? Yes. So what happens? I to the 22nd equals negative 1. That's it. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Now, about I to the 15th. Remember when we did I to the 3rd, we had to take away 1. So here's what we do. When the exponent is odd, you subtract 1. So 15 minus 1 is 14. Now we go back to what we know. We ask ourselves the question, is 14 divisible by 4? Is it? Well, it is not. So let us look at, is it divisible by 2? Well, it is. So the I to the 15th become negative 1 times I, which is negative I. So I know this, the I to the 15 is negative I. Now, similarly, let's try for I to the 37th. So what happens? We subtract 1. We get 36. We ask the question, is 36 divisible by 4? Well, what is the answer? It is yes. So since it is yes, that I to the 36 becomes positive 1. So it is 1 times I. So I to the 37 equals I. You see? That's it, ladies and gentlemen. That is it. No more. All right? Now, I would like you to try the following. You try these yourselves. Try. Ask yourself the question to see what you can come up with. If you did your work, you follow the rules, this is what you should end up with. Your answers are displayed here respectively, which means in the order they are presented up there. Okay? Now, let's consider adding complex numbers. Adding complex numbers is the same thing you do, just like combining like terms, just like any variable. It's just that the variable I, in this case, has some meaning to it, to later operations. But when you're adding complex numbers, ladies and gentlemen, you simply combine like terms. Let us consider the expression 3 plus 7i plus the expression 5 minus 2i. Ladies and gentlemen, we add the numbers that do not have i's together and the numbers that have i's together. So what we do, it becomes 3 plus 5 plus the expression 7 plus negative 2 times I. And ladies and gentlemen, we end up with 8 plus 5i. That's it. That's how you combine like terms in complex numbers. Let us look at another. Try it. Well, negative 7 and 2, they do not have I combine them, and we have 1 and negative 3, because these are the coefficients of the letter I. Alright, I combine them, and I end up with negative 5 plus negative 2i. And ladies and gentlemen, it's negative 5 minus 2i simplified. Alright, and at this point, ladies and gentlemen, you try this. See what you get. Try it. Well, if you follow the rules that is given to you, and you should end up with the following, which is 11 plus 2i. Well, I hope you learned something. You will need the skills for your work.